Let's start with the unsettling stuff and slowly work our way towards the most horrifying ones on the list. Number 6, the ancient Celts and their bog sacrifices. You've probably heard of bog bodies, those eerily preserved corpses found in peat bogs across northern Europe. But what you don't hear is how they got there. These weren't accidents, they were executions. The Celts believed that bogs were portals to the underworld, so they'd sacrifice people to their gods by drowning them, strangling them, or beating them to death, then dumping them in the water. The acidity of the bog would preserve their bodies for thousands of years, skin and all. One of the most famous is Lindo Man, found in England in 1984. Analysis showed he was in his mid-20s, well-fed, and healthy. Then he was hit twice in the head, strangled with a cord, and had his throat cut. Overkill, literally. Archaeologists think it was a triple death for a triple god. Then they threw him face down in the bog. When they examined his stomach contents, he'd eaten a ritualistic meal of burnt bread. Some researchers think he was nobility, volunteering for this because it guaranteed his family's status. Others think he was a criminal. Either way, the violence was extreme. And here's what messes with your head. His expression was preserved. He looks calm, almost peaceful. Number 5, the Nazca headhunters of Peru. Before the Inca, there were the Nazca, famous for those giant line drawings in the desert. But they had a darker hobby. They'd capture enemies, kill them, remove their heads, and turn them into trophies. But they didn't just cut the heads off and call it a day. They'd make an incision at the base of the skull, remove the brain and soft tissue, then use a cactus needle and plant fiber to sew the lips shut. Next, they'd punch a hole through the forehead and thread a rope through it so the head could be carried or worn. Some trophy heads show signs of being repainted and redecorated over years, meaning they were kept and used in ceremonies for decades. One archaeological site had over 300 trophy heads buried in a mass grave. Men, women, children. The children's heads are what get researchers. They're too young to be warriors. The best theory is that entire families were wiped out in raids and everyone's head was taken as proof of conquest. When Spanish explorers arrived in the 1500s, the practice was still happening in modified form. Some groups had shelves of heads displayed in their homes. Guests would be expected to admire them. Number 4, the Chinchorro mummies and their death masks. The Chinchorro people of Chile started mummifying their dead 2,000 years before the Egyptians. That's impressive. What's disturbing is how they did it. They'd disassemble the entire body, remove all the organs, skin, and muscle, then reinforce the skeleton with sticks and reeds. They'd stuff the body cavities with ash and grass, reattach the skin like a suit, and paint the whole thing black or red. Then they'd sculpt a clay mask over the face. These weren't just for chiefs or nobles. They mummified everyone. Babies, children, adults. Over 300 mummies have been found, and about a third are children under 2 years old. Some infant mummies show signs of being created from miscarried fetuses. They'd take a fetus that never took a breath and give it the full mummification treatment. Researchers think it was a response to incredibly high infant mortality rates. The ocean provided good food, but arsenic in the water was killing babies in huge numbers. So the Chinchorro created this elaborate death ritual to process their grief. One archaeologist said it's the most labor-intensive burial practice ever discovered. We're talking 20 to 30 hours per body. For a culture with no written language or metal tools, they were spending weeks on corpses. That level of dedication to the dead tells you how much death dominated their lives. Number 3, the Thuggee cult of India. For over 600 years, there was a secret society in India that worshipped Kali, the goddess of death, by murdering travelers. They weren't random killers. They were organized, methodical, and they had a system. A group of Thuggee would join a caravan or travel party, gain trust over several days, then at a predetermined signal, they'd strangle everyone using a ceremonial cloth called a rumal. No blood, no screaming, just silent, efficient murder. Then they'd rob the bodies and bury them in pre-dug graves. The British East India Company estimated they were killing 40,000 people per year at their peak. That's a Holocaust-level body count spread over centuries, and almost nobody knew it was happening because the Thuggee covered their tracks so well. They'd kill entire groups, meaning no witnesses. They'd bury bodies in remote locations. They operated across hundreds of miles, so no single region noticed a pattern. When the British finally infiltrated the cult in the 1830s, they arrested over 4,000 members. Many confessed to hundreds of murders each. One guy named Behram claimed to have killed 931 people personally over 40 years. The scariest part? These weren't outcasts or madmen. They were respected members of society. Merchants, traders, family men. They'd go on a killing spree for weeks, then come home and be normal dads and husbands. Dead. Number 2, the Maori Utu system and the musket wars. The Maori people of New Zealand had a concept called utu, which means balance. If someone wrongs you, you're obligated to restore balance through revenge. Sounds reasonable until you realize this led to multi-generational blood feuds where entire tribes would be wiped out. When Europeans arrived and introduced muskets in the 1810s, it turned into a nightmare. Tribes with guns would raid tribes without guns, killing thousands and enslaving the survivors. But here's the really disturbing part. They practiced extreme forms of ritual humiliation. Defeated chiefs would be killed, cooked, and eaten in front of their families. Some accounts describe warriors being forced to eat pieces of their own relatives. The most powerful insult was to use a defeated enemy's bones as fish hooks or flutes. One chief named Te Rauparaha became famous for composing a war dance that's still performed today, the haka. But what gets left out of the tourist version is that he created it while hiding in a food storage pit, afraid of being discovered and eaten. The musket wars killed an estimated 20,000 to 40,000 people out of a population of around 100,000. That's up to 40% of the entire Maori population in 30 years. Some tribes were completely erased. The survivors assimilated into other groups, and their names vanished from history. Gone. Number 1. The Sky Burial Masters of Tibet. At the top of certain mountains in Tibet, there are still places where the dead are taken to be torn apart. It's called sky burial, and it's technically still practiced today by some Buddhist groups. Here's how it works. When someone dies, their body is taken to a designated site, usually on a mountaintop. A specialist called a rogyapa uses knives and axes to dismember the corpse into pieces. We're talking about methodically breaking down a human body like butchering an animal. Then the pieces are left out for vultures. The rogyapa will crush the bones with a sledgehammer and mix them with barley flour to make sure even the skeleton gets consumed. Nothing is wasted. The idea is that the body is just an empty vessel after death, so you might as well give it back to nature in the most efficient way possible. It's considered an act of generosity to feed the birds. Now here's the part that makes your stomach turn. Tourists have been caught filming this. In the 2000s, Chinese tourists would pay locals to show them active sky burials. They'd stand there with cameras while a rogyapa was actively dismembering a human corpse. The Tibetan government eventually banned outsiders from attending because it had become a spectacle, but the practice continues in remote areas. One photographer who witnessed it said, "The sound is what stays with you. The cracking of bones, the flapping of dozens of vultures, and the complete silence of the rogyapa as he works." He described it as watching someone who'd done this thousands of times, who felt nothing anymore. Just routine, a job. So there you have it. If that got under your skin, you'll definitely want to check out the video on medieval torture devices that were still being used in the 1800s, because apparently humanity's capacity for horror didn't stop with ancient tribes.